I'm Nichole Dailey, Executive Chef here at Traeger Grills. We're in the test kitchen today and we're talking about brines. Dry brines, wet brines, all the damn brines. It's getting cold outside, it's November, it's almost Thanksgiving. We have been cooking so many turkeys, so we're gonna teach you what we learned. Now we're ready to go. So brines, what makes up a brine? Why do you do it? A brine is essentially a salt water solution. That's pretty much all you need to brine. You can flavor it up with some different aromatics. You can add in some whiskey, maple, some sugar. We're gonna be doing two different kinds. We've got a wet brine and a dry brine. A dry brine is pretty much just like a seasoning. It's a rub. You put it on the turkey, let it cure. A wet brine is all those same things mixed in a bunch of water and you submerge the turkey. All right, why you brine? So everybody's had that experience of a dry, nasty turkey on Thanksgiving. It's far too common. One thing that a brine does is it helps impart some of that moisture so you don't have to deal with a dry, sad bird. It adds more flavor. It can infuse different flavors into your bird, and it's really one of those key things that makes up a successful Thanksgiving turkey. So when you should brine, depends on what kind of brine you're doing. It depends on the size of your bird. If you've got a smaller bird, it's obviously going to be a lot shorter window. If you've got a bigger bird, these are 18, 20-pound birds, it's going to be a lot longer. A dry brine usually goes longer. You're gonna go anywhere from 7 hours to, I've seen sometimes you do it over 24 hours. It just depends on your preference, what makes up your brine, what's in your brine. A wet brine, you don't really wanna go much more than 12 hours. So all of those things will make up how much time you need to plan for this in advance. So foundations of a brine, like I said, is water and salt. There's different things that you can swap out. You can add in different kinds of sugar. You can use brown sugar. You can use honey as a sugar substitute. You can use maple, granulated sugar, kind of whatever you've got on hand. When it comes down to the salt, you've got to be careful because different kinds of salt have different salt content. So if you're using table salt, if you're using kosher salt, diamond salt, a large flake salt, they all weigh different and they all sit in a measuring cup different. So your best bet is to go by what the salt weighs, and it's usually around 2 tablespoons per pound of turkey that you're brining. When it comes down to the aromatics, just play around with it and see what you like. You can use different kinds of citrus. You can use lemons, oranges, anything in that family. I always include peppercorns, and then you can add in different herbs, different seasonings. You can go cinnamon, maple, whiskey. You can go, today we're using rosemary and lemon. It really just depends on what flavor profile you're after. Okay, so we're gonna start with our wet brine. We've got our basic components here. The biggest thing that you need for a wet brine is you have to account for space to brine it. We're gonna use a big bucket. You can use a cooler. You can use like a 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot. Just make sure it's clean and sanitary. It's the biggest thing you gotta worry about. So, to show you the difference in the two brines, we're using the same ingredients. So we've got dry rosemary, peppercorns, brown sugar, kosher salt, and lemon. We've got a little bit of water in here. We're just gonna add this into that. And then we're just gonna take a couple of lemons and squeeze them right inside. And I just leave the whole lemon in the brine. So with wet brine, the biggest issue with brining, like I said, is making sure you have the space for it, right? So with a wet brine, you can put it in a cooler outside and not worry about it as long as it stays cold. With a dry brine, it's gonna stay in the brine longer, so you have to account for that. You might have a turkey sitting in your fridge taking up, really valuable real estate in your fridge leading up to Thanksgiving, where a wet brine, it's outside in your cooler and you don't have to worry about it. So, like I said, we've got an 18-pound bird here. You just want to make sure you pull out any of the neck, the gizzards, anything like that. Pull out the little popper if it comes with them, because those things are pointless anyway. And then we're just gonna put this in our brine, and you wanna make sure that it goes inside the cavity. So there's gonna be a little air pocket when you first put it in there. Make sure your bird's completely submerged, and then you're gonna transfer this either to your fridge, a cooler like I said, somewhere to keep it below 41 degrees. If you're brining 2 turkeys at the same time, you can use the same brine for those 2 turkeys. You don't want to reuse brines, but if you're doing them at the same time, that's totally fine. You would just account for the total number of pounds that you're trying to brine versus individual. This has been a huge topic of conversation over the last few years, right? Dry brine versus wet brine. One of the reasons that people prefer a dry brine is because your bird isn't sitting there submerged in water for X amount of hours. Sometimes that can lead to a less crispy skin, maybe it gets a little rubbery. With a dry brine, you don't have to worry about that. It basically sits in your fridge and dries out that skin, so you get a nice super crispy crust on the outside. So for our dry brine, basically all you're doing, it seems a little intimidating because it's kind of foreign, but it's really not. Basically all you're doing is you're seasoning your bird hours ahead of when you normally would. So you're gonna take whatever seasoning you're using. Like I said, today we have kosher salt. This is ground up black peppercorn and dry rosemary. A little bit of brown sugar again. And then we're gonna do some lemon zest. One of the other huge differences between dry and wet brine, you can see the difference in the quantity of ingredients that you're using. So you use far less salt, far less seasoning, far less sugar, because you don't have to completely submerge it, you're just seasoning the outside. So what you're gonna do is basically season like this bird, like you were just gonna throw it on the grill right after you were seasoning it. And then you're gonna transfer it to the fridge and basically just let it sit and cure. This one we're gonna do for about 12 hours. And then after you pull it out of the fridge, you pretty much just throw it straight on the grill. So the biggest thing you wanna make sure is that you season every square inch of this bird. So you season the cavity, you season the underside, you season both of the exterior sides. You want to really get it nice and covered. You're just going to have it on a wire rack so the air can circulate all the way around the bird and really dry it out. So you're not gonna rinse this brine off. If you want to use your favorite rub on your Thanksgiving turkey, just include it in your dry brine. So those rubs are made up of salt and sugar, just like a brine is. So just use that as a portion of your dry brine. Just be conscious of the salt content of whatever rub you're using. You'll throw it on before you dry brine it, but then we won't season it again. So all that flavor that you want in your turkey, you gotta do it now. So, we're gonna take both of these turkeys to the fridge. This one's gonna they're both gonna sit for 12 hours in the fridge actually, and then we'll pull them out and show you what they look like. Okay, so we've been brining for about 12 hours. We're gonna go ahead and pull these out. So the biggest difference you're gonna see is the color difference. We've got our dry brine. Right here, you can see the skin's kind of shrunk up a little bit. It's kind of stuck to the bird. It's dried out a little. The salt has definitely done its job. Our wet brine is no attractive way to do this. So, you can see the color difference right off the bat on these two. On the wet, we're just gonna pat it dry. And then I've got a little bit of the same seasoning that we put in the brine. So it's just rosemary, lemon zest, kosher salt, and brown sugar. And we're just gonna season the outside of this one a little. But again, you need to be conscious of the fact that it's already been in a salt solution, it's already been brined, so you're not gonna season it as heavily as you normally would something that hasn't been brined. One thing to keep in mind when brining turkeys, a lot of conventional turkeys are pre-brined. They sit in a salt solution prior to going to the grocery store. So when you're purchasing your bird, make sure you read the label so you know what you're buying. Because if you buy a pre-brined bird and then brine it again, that's how you end up with super salty turkey. Okay, so we're just seasoning the outside of this. If you like to do butter under the skin, olive oil on the outside, butter on the outside, whatever your preference is, this is the point that you would do it. So you do the butter first and then give it a light rub on the outside. Make sure you get the cavity so it goes all the way through. So the next thing we want to do is truss. I kind of do a half-ass truss. For someone that's never trussed a bird before, it's an easy way to start out. So you just tuck the wings underneath the shoulder blades here, and it kind of helps the turkey sit a little more centered because the wings are out like this. And then you just tie the legs. So you're gonna take a piece of twine. This one's excessively long, but you're just gonna tuck it up under kind of the hip bones and pull it up so it's even. And then you grab these two pieces and pull it towards you. This part is super helpful because once you pull it tight, you can see it pulls the skin up over the breast, which will protect it through the cooking process, and it helps keep it shaped, makes it nice and plump, makes for a good presentation and even cooking. So go, pull that there, and then you're gonna go under the legs and across, and then just tie it at the top. And you've got yourself a nice little tight turkey. So we're gonna do the same thing with this one. We'll just cut these extras off since this string is so long. All right, so you've done all the hard work. Now it's for the easy part. We've got our grill at 325. Let's go throw these on. Okay, so we've got our birds off the grill. Both of these took about 4 hours at 325. And you can see the color difference. So this is our dry brine, this is our wet. You can see the skin's a little crispier, a little more brown. You can see it on this side really well. Both look beautiful. So we're gonna slice a piece off. It's so crispy, you can hear it. It's nice and juicy inside. Still super juicy. This one's not quite as crisp as the dry brine, which is what I prefer, but if you don't eat the skin anyway, they're both so good. So let's try them out. It's super moist, and the salt content is honestly perfect. I love the citrus in the bird. It kind of cuts through, gives it a little bit more flavor, kind of accentuates the flavors that are already there. They're both really, really good, super moist. You can taste the lemon a lot in this one, and I think the peppercorn really comes through on the wet brine. So if we learned anything today, I think we learned that you can't go wrong either way. They're both delicious. Wet brine, dry brine, whatever you decide to do, it's gonna be delicious. Share it with your friends and family, but you're gonna be stuck doing this for the rest of your life because Traeger turkeys are delicious. So good luck and have a happy Thanksgiving.